Welcome to Winning Retail. This is producer Ben Wilson. On this episode, we are thrilled to welcome Michelle Greenwald. Michelle is a former SVP at Disney, Vice President and General Manager at Pepsi, Business School Professor at Columbia and NYU Stern, author of Catalyzing Innovation, and founder and CEO at Inventours. She's also a consultant, a writer for Forbes and other publications, and a popular speaker at forums like TEDx and beyond. In this interview, Tony and Michelle talk about innovative retail and where it can be found, future technologies that will impact retail, and much more.
This podcast is presented by Dell Technologies and Intel. Together, we help you realize digital transformation across retail by driving IT innovation to better engage with today's connected consumer. Learn more at delltechnologies.com/retail and intel.com/retail.
So without further ado, let's jump over to the interview with your host, Tony Saldanha and Michelle Greenwald.
Welcome to Winning Retail, your podcast for what the future of retail is going to bring to you. Winning Retail is for you if you're an executive, either in retail or in technology. It is the show for you if you're trying to keep yourself ahead of the competition. And it's a show for you if you're trying to learn from peers on best practices. Today's topic is reinventing retail. And I'm absolutely delighted to have one of the best people that I know on this subject, Michelle Greenwald, here with us. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. I'm a big fan of yours, Tony. I hold you in awe. And I think a mutual admiration society.
Well, that's very nice of you. Thank you. Michelle, you and I have known each other for a few years, and I have been absolutely fascinated by the depth of knowledge, your practical application of how you essentially bring together digital technology and the retail space and marketing. And you do that in a very, very practical manner. What I'd like to do is actually start by having you tell us your story. Go back in time and then bring us up to date on how you've got to this incredible place and an incredible resume.
Okay, super. So I think it started when I was a kid. My parents took me traveling a lot. When I was in third grade, I was 8 years old, and they took me out of school for a month to go to Europe and the Middle East. And that was highly unusual. Parents didn't take their kids to Europe in those days, let alone out of school for a month. But I had grown up outside of New York City, and my family used to call Manhattan the city. And I thought that New York was the center of the world and that everybody spoke English. And when I went traveling, I was very frustrated in not being able to communicate with other kids. And I realized the importance of language. And I became an international relations major at the University of Pennsylvania. And I went on 2 programs with the Experiment in International Living, one to Spain and one to France. And I stayed with families that didn't speak any English. And so it helped me learn the language, learn the culture, learn the foods, learn the customs. It was really, really a wonderful experience. And I've taken it with me to the present because I speak Spanish pretty fluently now, do a lot of programs in Spain and with people who come from South America, Central America. And I also speak French, which I've enjoyed tremendously. I went straight through to business school, went to Kellogg, got an MBA in marketing, graduated when I was 23. And in those days, I kind of was at the beginning of women having careers in business. The class ahead of me in business school was 6% women. And all of a sudden there was an explosion. And my class had about 23% women. Oh. But anyway, so then I worked for CPG firms for 19 years. I worked for General Foods, which doesn't exist anymore, but parts of it are in Kraft and Mondelez. Yeah. Worked at Nestle, Pepsi, J. Walter Thompson on Kraft, CPG products, as well as financial services and health and beauty aids. And then I went on to Disney, where I was a senior vice president of new business development, and also at Mattel. And one of the things, I've had a very fun career because I moved around a lot. I learned how to learn industries quickly and what questions to assess about foundational strategies and creative ways for brands to differentiate themselves. And to this day, I love creativity. I love marketing strategy. And the lessons that I learned really what I love about consumer packaged goods as a background, it's not as popular as a first job today as it was when I graduated, but you learn how to be a general manager.
Yes.
And also in those days, it was pre-internet. So as a brand manager, you could work on virtually every aspect of the business, where today marketing has become much more fragmented. So I feel like I had great training on strategy and marketing research and new product development and managing a multifunctional team. So that was a lot of fun. And then after 19 years, I became a professor. I don't know if I would have envisioned that when I started, but that's been a wonderful journey for me as well. So I've taught about 9 different classes, different course subjects at leading business schools, including Wharton, Berkeley, Columbia, NYU Stern, Cornell, IESE from Spain, HEC Paris, and Seoul National University. And I've gotten to work at all different levels, from undergrads to exec MBAs to CEOs and boards of directors, because I've done a lot of exec ed programs with execs from all over the world. And I feel so lucky. I love preparing the content, but I also learned so much from my students. And because I've taught, among other things, new product and service development, entrepreneurship and innovation, marketing plan development, I've supervised literally thousands of new product plans and marketing plans in virtually every industry all over the world. And my students have to do an analysis of the business, of the industry, of competitors, of what the brand has done before, what's worked and not worked. And they have to pull it all together to form strategies and then programs to implement. And so I learn about industries constantly. I have about 200 students right now, and I'm in the middle of reading their projects, and it's fascinating. And then also, because digital marketing and so many aspects of marketing change constantly, like TikTok has become a phenomenon. I hear it from my students, and then I investigate and learn more and talk to the companies. And I have amazing guest speakers. Like this semester, I've had speakers from Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, Accenture, Deloitte, you name it. And they come in and I learn from my speakers. So that's been so much fun. And then just a few more things just to get up to the current. I've given talk on 5 continents, ranging from digital transformation and innovation best practices in Taiwan, to smart cities in Buenos Aires and Barcelona, to trends in grocery retail in New Zealand. And these are very fun and energizing for me. I'm not always an expert on the subject, but when I'm asked to speak, it's fun for me to put together the content and learn about the area. And then something that was very, very influential in getting me to where I am today is that in 2008, I taught at IESE Business School in Barcelona, which was just named the #1 exec ed programs in the world for the 6th time in a row. It's a top business school in Europe. It's also rated the #1 MBA by The Economist in Europe. And I've been teaching for them since 2008. But when I was there, the chairman of the marketing department wrote a Harvard case about Ferran Adrià, who I believe is the most creative chef who ever lived. His restaurant was 5 times #1 in the world. There's 15 hours of Amazon Prime documentary about the history of the restaurant. And I've become an advisor to Ferran and gotten to know him quite well. And based on the way he innovated, it inspired me to write my book, Catalyzing Innovation, and also to start my program, Inventours, where I take C-suite execs out of their country and industry to benchmark leading innovators in other countries.
Right.
And then I've been doing a lot of things in the innovation space. Last fall, I did a program in Portugal for the CEO and boards of directors of the leading telco. I did a program in innovation for CEOs from Ghana and Nigeria in the fall, for Shiseido, the Japanese cosmetic companies, for Heineken. So just, to summarize, if somebody asked me what I do, I'd say at the hodgepodge, and I call myself a cross-pollinator, because I've been in so many companies and I've seen so much that I'm sort of able to make connections. And I like to help companies, again, come up with ideas that from other industries that they could bring into their own.
That is, every time I hear about your resume, I feel like I've lost a large part of my mind, i.e., completely mind blown, because most people would consider a good career as one in which they've made a big difference in one area. But in your case, Michelle, you've worked for pretty much who's who in the CPG space, and now you basically run a business in addition to teaching and all that other good things, where the world's leading companies and their executives come to you, and you take them around and you show them the future of retail. So that basically, every time I do this, I just have one question, which is, how did you develop these skills that are so broad-based? So now you're able to make connections across all of these different capabilities.
Okay, well, it's good, very good question. Perfect segue. I've tried to work for blue chip companies in my career. My philosophy was always to maximize my options, to not get pigeonholed into one area so that I couldn't ever move. And so I've been very lucky because I've worked for a number of companies that I mentioned. And so I was able to learn from each of them. All of them had different ways of doing things, but I was able to learn best practices and kind of collect best practices from observing how they all operated. So
Okay.
I thought that really gave me an ability to be flexible and ability to learn and realize that there's more than one way to do things.
Right.
And then another philosophy of mine has been to collect skill sets. So I'm always trying to learn, even at my age, to learn new things. And I found that it's served me well because since I've done a little bit in so many different areas, people will say, well, have you ever done anything in this field? And I can say, well, I did something with a bank, in Hong Kong, and therefore I have some knowledge of financial services. Or I wrote a business school case about the California milk industry. And when they interviewed me, I worked on Nestle Quick. So there's something always that I can relate. So that basically collecting skill sets is one second thing. I love learning. I really am very energized by it. And the Forbes column has enabled me to interview people about subjects that I think I should know, that I want to understand better. I mentioned that I learned from my students. Inventours has enabled me to go into many companies around the world and benchmark the most innovative companies in different sectors. And that's fascinating because I get insights from that. And then Catalyzing Innovation, my book has about literally 1,100 different examples of innovations that I thought were very unique. My criteria was that it was a new way of doing something that had never been done in that field before in that country. And it's trained my brain to always be on the lookout for what's innovative every day all around me. So literally, people who spend time with me, number one, I sort of rewire their brains. And they think it's funny that I'm always taking pictures and finding like innovation often in little things. Innovation doesn't have to be high tech and super complicated. It can be very simple. Yes. And then the very last thing is that I love reading biographies of innovative people in different fields. Okay. So just as examples, I've read biographies on Walt Disney, Claude Monet, the Wright brothers, Jack Ma, Jeff Bezos, Steve Jobs, Johnny Ives, Leonardo da Vinci, Elon Musk, and I finished the biography of Winston Churchill. And then there's a fabulous book called How Google Works, which is written by Eric Schmidt, the former CEO, and Jonathan Rosenberg. So I love reading about innovative people. And many of them were not successful in the beginning, but they had a tenacious outlook and they just constantly had to do better, and they constantly pushed their organizations. So that's inspiring to me.
Absolutely. I think perseverance is a common thread that actually comes across all of these. And that's something, again, I think I've seen in your work. I remember actually about a year ago being on 42nd Street in New York, and you and I were talking. I was on the cell phone with you, and you said, hey, go check out those two stores because you're going to see, new examples of technology there, of digital transformation. And that is something that I admire, because you have that ability as you said, to walk into a retail store and find something that's unique. And then you don't want to talk about concepts. You want to show pictures. You want to show exactly what that looks like, which leads me to the question, in your mind, what are the most mind-blowing retail technology innovations that you're seeing?
Okay, well, I knew you were going to ask about technology at retail. And to me, there are 4 companies that are excelling right now. One of them is Nike House of Innovation.
Hmm.
Another is Puma. Another is Nordstrom, and then Zara.
Hmm.
And if you want, I could just tell you what I find really innovative and
Please
mind-blowing
do. Yeah,
about each
yeah,
of those.
yeah.
Okay, so Nike has the House of Innovation. It's on Fifth Avenue around 54th Street. And they do a lot of different things. They're great at storytelling, talking about the technology and materials and weaving processes that go into making their shoes comfortable and light and performing. So there's a lot of, interactive educational stuff about what makes their products unique and different.
Right.
There's also a section for customization, and you can customize your sole and your laces and your colors and all different things. And people love being unique and different. So that's a fun thing.
In fact, that was, sorry, I was just going to say, that was
Mhm.
one of the stores that you suggested I go check out. And I did. And it is absolutely mind-blowing.
It is mind blowing. There's an area where you can shoot hoops, and you can take a picture of a video of yourself, analyze your technique, and then you can send it to other people. So it's very viral. That's something, these things about storytelling, customization, making their stores Instagrammable, which has been a new KPI that's really important. All these stores are paying attention to that. Another aspect that everybody's paying attention to, the big time, is omni-channel. Having people use their app. If they use their app in the store, Nike can tell if they were on the website earlier in the day, what they were looking at. They can use the app to order product in the store. It's very interesting how all these stores are encouraging people to order whichever way is comfortable. And in many cases, there are like 3 or 4 different ways that you can order online where you're in the physical store. So you can
Right.
order through your app, or you can have the salesperson deliver product to you through the app. You can also order from your office and there's a locker where you can pick it up. So there's a lot of omni-channel integration. There are QR codes on the soles of the shoe. So if you put it down on a special table, you can get product information, how it's manufactured, where it's manufactured, a lot of interesting information. Or that you can ask the salesperson by just with your phone snapping the code on the bottom of the shoe. It tells the salesperson to bring it to you. There's also in-store data analytics demonstrated, because there's an area that says what products are trending in New York. So they're looking at local market trends, and there's information on that. There's also an indoor-outdoor running experience where you can try on your shoes, analyze your running, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just, adding many different dimensions, and there's a massive wow. People stand on the staircase looking down at the people playing basketball, and it's just really dynamic and exciting.
It has
So,
almost become like another tourist spot, whether or not you want to buy the shoes. But the buzz that it generates, it's got to be incredible, right?
Exactly. It's kind of a go-to destination, and anybody who comes from out of town, I send them there. Another store that's really great is Puma. It's just a few blocks away, and they have Formula One racing simulators, so you can sit side by side with someone, like in a car, like with a simulated race. There's a cafe. They also have design your own sneakers. They have an immersive skill cube where you can kick a soccer ball, and it analyzes your kick. And at the end, there's a stadium that comes to life and fans cheer you. And then there's 4 ways to buy. So if you're in the dressing room, the mirrors are computer screens, and you can order online from the mirror, or you can accessorize and go through the website and look at other items. It's a great way to see a lot of product in the store without spending too much time.
Yeah.
They also have kiosks on the main floor that you can order from. You can order from your phone. And then a lot of the salespeople can help you and order from their tablets. So, I think that that's super interesting. And then again, for Instagrammability, there's a giant Puma sneaker in the bottom of the store. So people come in and they want to stand next to it.
Well, I haven't been there. That's my next visit as soon as I can get out of this town.
Yeah. And then there are two more that I think are very interesting. One of them is Nordstrom. And Nordstrom, to me, is omni-channel on steroids.
Yeah.
They have launched their first flagship store in New York near Columbus Circle. There's a men's store and a women's store, and they're beautiful. And there's a fabulous cafe restaurant in the bottom. The atmosphere is great. But they've launched satellite locations around Manhattan called Nordstrom Local. And what's fascinating about this is you can pick up your packages there. You can try them on. There's a dressing room. There's a tailor on site, so he can measure you and alter your clothes for you.
Okay.
You can also have your gifts wrapped. And if you don't want it after trying it on, you can just leave it there and no hassle. It'll just get taken back. And then again, you can order through the kiosk. They have very limited clothes there on mannequins, and there's a code on the clothes on the mannequin, and you can just, scan it with your phone, and then you can order through that. And again, you can order on your app, or they have like style consultants with iPads, and they'll sit there with you and help you figure out what to buy.
Oh.
And lastly, you can donate your clothes there.
Interesting.
So
okay.
It's fascinating. It's really fascinating to me. And then the last one is Zara. And Zara has three things I find interesting. One, all these companies are trying to reduce friction.
Yes.
So if you see a line in the store, you might decide, I don't have time. I have to get back to work. I'll buy it another time. Well, anytime you do that, there's a chance you're not going to buy.
Yes.
So Zara now has check yourself out from the dressing room. So literally as you're exiting the dressing room, you can check yourself out, just like CVS has. Also, there's like an AR in-store fashion show. So if you hold your phone to the mannequin starts walking around like it's a fashion show.
Oh, that is so cool.
It's very cool. Oh. And then the last thing I find interesting, and this is on 5th Avenue and 42nd Street, the window has 2 QR codes on it. One of them is what's on sale, and another, which is the spring catalog.
Okay.
So you don't even have to enter the store, and you can see the collection just standing on the street.
Oh.
So I think the use of technology is fascinating. Not everybody can do all this because it costs a lot of money, but I do think it's the way things are going.
It is, isn't it? And it's a little bit like the idea of concept cars in many of these cases, in the sense that just like in the racing industry, the car racing industry, you have these cars that are essentially meant to innovate and to influence the direction of the industry. And these are great examples that you're sharing. And what I love about all of these, Michelle, is not just that about all of these, and I've seen your presentation, 100 other cases that you could talk about, but that, these are also, examples that you ask people to see. You take them to these stores to see. So you're a strong believer in show, don't tell. Right? Go see for yourself. And that is one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, which is, in the work that you do with Inventors, you have a strong belief that they need to actually get out of not just their hometown and come to New York, but get out of your conference room of Inventors in New York and go to the stores and see examples. The question I have for you is, why do you think it's so important for people to see? And many of these examples could be cross-industry, but what is it about actually seeing that in your mind makes such a big difference to the quality of innovation?
It's a great question. What's interesting, I think a lot of companies feel that doing busy work is accomplishing something. And that going out and traveling internationally to see new ideas or going to stores is a frivolous waste of time. But the truth is, you see what's going on in other sectors that you can bring into yours. And I know some of these programs, because I organize the safaris sometimes by vertical.
Yeah.
So I've had CPG firms, for example, or even Michelin. I did one with Michelin C-suite execs, and they're benchmarking, even actually KPMG, for example. They're going to cafes and liquor stores and beauty stores and fashion stores and electronic stores. And you'd think that, oh, they wouldn't learn anything because it's not their sector.
Right.
But they're learning customer experience, they're learning about technology, they're learning about merchandising, they're learning about so many things. And I'm always like, I mean, I know this to be the case, but I'm always delighted and they're always surprised at how much they can learn and bring back to their business.
Yeah.
And also, a lot of these companies deal with retail in one way or another, but they don't see trends in customer interaction, in merchandising, in aesthetics. It gives them a different insight. They're so focused on their own industry that they don't see what's going on more broadly.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it is. And having been through one of those that you organized for us when I worked at Procter & Gamble several years ago, I can attest to the fact that real disruption always comes from, cross-fertilization of ideas across industries. And retail is one of those that I think, clearly shows influence from all kinds of industries. And again, I think your policy of, showing so people can actually look across things and say, why can I not apply this to insurance or pharmaceuticals or whatever, I think is a fascinating concept. And that is one of the reasons why I always admire the energy that you have to actually go out and discover new places and new examples that you can show companies and executives, and not just in New York, as you said, through your examples all over the world. But the one thing that I wanted to get into next was, as you go about creating this collection of quite literally hundreds of examples, what is it that you see in these situations?
My criteria are that it get noticed, that it makes people smile, that it's a better way of doing things. When I give my programs on innovation, the first thing I say is, like, what words, when you hear innovation, what words do you think of? And then what reactions do you have? Like, what do you say to yourself? So, for example, you say, wow, or you say, what, wasn't it clever? Or what a better way to do something. And now I've added another one because of Instagram, which is, that's so cool that I want to share it. And that's the filter that I use when I do the retail safaris with execs from all over the world, is if you were going to, of everything that you saw on your trip looking through stores, what would you Instagram? What stood out? What meant something to you? What would you say in the Instagram? And what would the hashtags be? So that's kind of a filter. Is it wow worthy? Ferran Adrià had a 35-course meal that was new. Every year he had a new 35-course meal. And he had pressure to innovate. That's something that I think leads to innovation. Like Apple has pressure to innovate because every year they want new products for you, to buy. But they also have criteria about what is going to be wow worthy. What is going to live? How do you maintain number one restaurant in the world? You have to have a criteria for what's really different, that's going to make people think, that's going to make people have an emotional response. But you need criteria for, what's innovative. Yeah.
And that's that. I think you've put it succinctly in these 2 or 3 criteria, and I love the wow worthy criteria, because I think that's one that obviously is very, very important in retail, just because of the pace of change. But that's equally important if you're a machine manufacturer or you're a chemicals manufacturer or any other manufacturer, because disruption, especially disruption driven by consumer preferences and the consumerization of product, is going to come from that wow experience. And so I think, as a criteria, the fact that you've been able to kind of encapsulate that and use that in the way you show others how to see it is fabulous. That's very, very cool, Michelle. I really do admire that. I want to kind of pivot a little bit back to technology, because again, you have practical experience that very few people on earth have when it comes to retail technology. There's so many technologies that are being pushed out there. that are being called disruptive today, right? So you've got AR, VR, you've got artificial intelligence, you've got the Internet of Things, you've got, different types of displays that do all kinds of magic. As you step back and as you lead executives through all of these cool places, in your mind, what is the one or two big disruptive technologies that you see happening out there?
Well, I don't know if this is very new, and I've only seen it one place, but I curated the Consumer Electronics Show for a company, and we went to meet with Delta, and Delta has something called parallel reality, which I had never seen before.
Parallel reality.
Parallel,
That's new. Okay.
Yes, it is new. It's the only place I've ever seen it. But if you are in a terminal and you look at the sign for what gate to go to and whether it's on time or not,
okay,
every single person will look up at the same sign and see customized for them only their information. So no matter where you're standing,
wow. Okay.
yes, they're doing supposed to be, I don't know what's going to happen because of coronavirus, but it's supposed to be tested this summer in Detroit. And they work with a company called, I believe, Misapplied Sciences. But, everything having to do with customization is a big thing. In terms of disruptive retail, really, because of coronavirus, I think this physical retail is going to have very big problems for the next who knows how long. And so now the big thing to me is, how can digital replace physical?
Yes.
So you have things, and some of them are not new, but you have cosmetic companies and Warby Parker where you can scan your face and you can see what the makeup looks like on you, or the glasses look on you, or sending samples home, or Ninja Chat, like Bonobos has a chat ninja where you can, because what are the things that you do in retail that have to be replicated at home? One is the human communication, discovery, anything multisensory in terms of touching the material, trying it on, smelling so you go to a bakery, it smells wonderful.
Right.
So, how can you replicate? This is where I think companies need to focus, because more and more business obviously is going to be done online. Someone that I respect said he thinks that coronavirus has catapulted certain industries by 10 years in terms of the acceleration to online.
Yes.
And so this is where I think companies need to be thinking about is what are all the things that retail is good for? And I happen to think that small brands are going to have a more difficult time getting discovered and noticed.
Yes,
because people are gravitating to the things that they know and they're familiar with, and you don't have the benefit of being in a store and, just perusing and discovering.
Yes. And it is amazing because I suspect that your answer to that question 3 months ago would not have included this issue of how do you actually accelerate 10 years into the future to make the physical into digital. And so I think there's an entire new set of sensory experiences that I think are going to be catapulted into the forefront of this revolution, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. It's a good question. And if you had asked me 3 months ago, I would have talked a little bit more about experiential. I described the Puma and Nike stores as very experiential. American Girl Doll is a very experiential store. It brings the dolls to life. It's very interesting in terms of multi-sensory. There are buttons on the wall where you can smell the sagebrush of the Southeast for the doll Josephina. You can take your doll to lunch, literally with a menu, and they have a high chair for the doll. You can have the hair done. You can customize your own outfit to look like the doll's outfit, and you can customize a pet. It's just everything. So interactive and experiential are massive, massive trends. And then, customization, personalization, those are big things that are going on. But it's hard for little stores to do that. But even sometimes they can just do one thing. For example, there is a store called, I don't know if it's called Nomad. It's, they make cashmere sweaters, and the cashmere comes from goats in Mongolia.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a regular clothing store, except there's a place where you can stick your head in a VR headset and you can be transported to Mongolia and seeing how the goats are tended.
Oh, that is so Awesome. Oh, very nice.
It is
But
very.
that's a great example, Michelle, which is that creativity knows no bounds, right? So you don't have to have an expensive store with 40 gimmicks. It could be that one thing, but the idea of being transported only to Mongolia to see the goats from where Kashmir comes from. I mean, that is so creative, isn't it?
It's very creative. Another example, somewhat similar, is Tom's, the shoe company. They have a flagship store in Venice, California, which is where their headquarters is, and they have a virtual giving trip. So they're all about one for one. Well, they've actually changed. They're now focused on gun violence right now, preventing gun violence. Yeah. But they were very focused for a very long time on one for one giving. And you can sit in a chair, put on the VR headset, and for 4 minutes, you're transported to Peru. You are going down a dirt road in the middle of you don't know where. You come into a very poor, dry-looking village, and then they start handing out shoes to the kids, and everybody's smiling, and you get to experience the giving mission that all their employees get to go on.
So, Michelle, one of the things that you do is you lead tours to some very exotic places. And you've talked in the past about some amazing technology, everything from quantum computing to some really, really amazing blockchain and other case studies that you have seen. So would you mind giving our listeners an example of how some of these technologies are being looked at as a way to kind of transform industry and potentially retail?
Okay, so in Barcelona, for example, the trip was, I've done several trips there, and it's been a combination of looking at fintech, quantum computing, and blockchain, and how that can affect lots of different industries, because quantum computing is going to be the next major technology to explode. Already, it's very, very big in China. But just from a retail standpoint, we met with Desigual, the clothing company, in their headquarters, and they have they picture the season. Everybody in the headquarters is working on the next season's clothes, but they have a store which puts it all together so they can immediately see how it comes together. And they have display windows, and there's a little digital terminal where they get reactions from the employees regarding the displays and what they can improve. So that's, really very instantaneous feedback that's important. We went to Estonia and Helsinki. Estonia is a country of 1.3 million people, but it's widely considered the most digital country in the world. Yeah. And they have an information superhighway where people enter their information once, and then can be accessed by anybody with your permission, and you see who has accessed it when. But what's interesting, I spent a day in eStonia, which is a government organization that helps digital startups, and they're masterful at taking inefficiency out of processes. Oh, okay. So just as examples, you can order a car from your mobile phone and have it delivered to your home with license plates on it. You file your taxes, you get your tax refund in 2 days. You go to a doctor and you don't have to fill out all the forms. Any healthcare institution, even a pharmacy, and all the information is there. You just authorize them to access it, and then you can tell who accessed it and when. So you really do have control over your information. And we went to a community called Kalasatama, which is a planned community of the future. And they have retail and healthcare integrated with homes that have efficient garbage collection, and everything is like, their goal is to save an hour of everybody's day with inefficient tasks that can be done in a more digital, smarter way. So,
and sorry, this is one of those examples. I just want to kind of pause on this because it's an example of how improvements that are done in the government sector, specifically around collecting information once, completely changes the whole retail experience, isn't it? Right? Connecting bank accounts to driver's licenses and all that kind of stuff. That's reinventing retail through changes that are being made in a completely different sector. So in the case of Estonia, it's eStonia, their government information highway. Isn't that right?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. And then the community, Finland is also quite digital. And in this planned community, I think it's very interesting that they looked at everything people that anybody does that's wasting time, that's not a good use of their time, and how can it be done more efficiently and quicker? And that's from parking, taking out your garbage, waiting for healthcare, going shopping, and everything is done. Literally the objective, which is a fascinating metric to me, is how to save like an hour in everybody's day with unnecessary tasks. So yes, and it's all very interrelated.
Oh, that is absolutely incredible. Again, fascinating.
Oh,
thanks for sharing that. Yes.
And then just a couple more examples. Singapore, we went to Singapore Airlines Digital Innovation Accelerator and how they're trying to digitize the end-to-end flying experience and also supply chain. So that was quite interesting. KPF we met with, which is an architecture firm that builds 15% of the world's high rises. They feel that Asia is the architect's playground and there's a lot of innovation in buildings, but they also talked about cities of the future, where in the past, business areas have been very separate from residential areas and shopping areas. And going forward, they're going to be much more integrated. So it was looking at, again, communities and how they're developing. Singapore is, from an urban planning standpoint, maybe the best place in the world in terms of just planning out how to make life pleasant for consumers. They also have to take, for every amount of land that you take, you have to put greenery in the building. So you have a fabulous amount of like oxygen and air and greenery on the roof inside. It's quite fascinating. And then the shopping center that I mentioned, Shangji Mall, it's very multisensory. They have the largest indoor waterfall in the world there. They have a botanical garden. There is multisensory. There's a scent that is very beautiful, and they've actually patented the scent, and they sell perfume and candles and things with the scent. And it's just, it's a playground that's so entertaining that people from Singapore go and hang out there, because it's just, there's a light show. It's very, very multisensory. And so that's also, to me, a reconceptualization of retail.
Yeah, no, it's a theme park that also happens to be an airport, right? So
exactly. And the train to go to, the airport tram goes through this forest. And you can see the sound and light show from the tram going to the airport. It's fabulous. And then just lastly, Copenhagen, we met with Klaus Meyer, who is, he was a partner in Noma, which was #1 in the world after this restaurant in Spain. And, just talking about, he has a deli concept. He's got he's got a bakery where they grow the grain. It's very like vertically integrated. They grow the grain, they grind it in the bakery right before they put it into the bread. So that was kind of interesting to see. Bjarke Ingels Group, the architecture firm that I mentioned, is so interesting. The Bicycle Innovation Lab was very interesting because it's about the future of mobility. Denmark has the highest number of people that commute to work. 35% of Danes commute to work, even in the winter when it's cold. And then met with Stelton, the housewares and Danish design firm that has items in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, or rather the MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art. So anyway, it's just really fun and interesting to be inspired by people who are really creative and who have excelled. And there's a lot to be learned.
And again, nothing like travel and different contexts to make those unconventional connections across these. But that's very cool. Well, thank you. Those are great examples. Okay. Very cool. Very, very nice. Yeah. This is such a fascinating topic. And we're going to have bring you back on our show here, because you have enough stories to kind of keep going for another 10, 15, 20, 100 shows. But I wanted to actually ask you a slightly different question. You've mentioned, obviously, your connection with food previously. But one of the things that I didn't really know about is just how much you're connected to food. America's leading chefs, multicultural cookbooks, traveling all over the world to understand how food can bring childhood memories. So tell us a little more about this personal mission.
Well, I told you my parents took me traveling when I was young, and food was always a very big part of our trips. Yes. And my parents taught me to be an adventurous eater. Also, when I was in France, I did a project on French cooking, went to a bakery in the middle of the night to watch them make croissants and French pastries. I was in Normandy, so I went to a farm where they made Pont l'Evêque cheese, and I went to a cidrerie where they make hard apple cider. And I've just always been very interested in the food making process and how it really relates to culture.
Yeah.
And also when I was a kid, in New York, we do adventures to Little Italy and to Chinatown and to, at that time, Benihana for Japanese food. But
Yeah.
my parents taught me to be an adventurous eater when I was young. So, and then I lived in California, which was a magical melting pot. The name of my cookbook is The Magical Melting Pot. And we lived in a community where there were 26 languages spoken in the high school. And my kids would invite me to International Day, and we'd go to the booth of the, Korean kids would have Korean food, and the Japanese kids would have Japanese food, and the Mexican kids would have Mexican food, etc. And this community, my kids' friends, all their parents practically were born in different countries.
Okay.
And my neighbor was Thai, Chinese, married to Irish Italian. One of my daughter's best friends' mom was from Korea. The dad was from Armenia. And so they go to each other's houses and they eat the food, and they loved it so much.
Yeah.
And so I realized it was a non-political, non-threatening way to learn about other cultures and to appreciate other cultures and to become more accepting.
Yeah.
And
it is. Yeah.
So my sister worked in Hollywood, and she wanted to start a new TV network. And she would always come to me. She's very creative, but she would come to me with business ideas. And I had no idea how to create a network. That's beyond my abilities. But I've had the idea to create a cooking show for kids, because all cooking shows really are focused on adults.
That is so true. Yes.
So I wanted to teach kids about other cultures through food.
Yeah.
And I started this process. I had it illustrated by a high school honors art student who was Chinese Mormon.
Mm.
She did illustrations, and I had the high school honors art teacher do maps of the continents. So I interviewed. At first, I wasn't going after famous chefs, but I found it was easier working with the very famous chefs because they already had cookbooks and they loved publicity. So I have a Nobu in my cookbook, Marcus Samuelson,
Wow.
Ming Tsai, Thomas Keller, Alice Waters, Ella Brennan.
Oh my God.
I have amazing people, and they love talking about their childhood memories and favorite foods. And it was also about their journey to become in the food industry. And it wasn't just chefs; it was food writers and sommeliers and people in different aspects of food. And I ended up doing an educator's guide for high school students to learn about other cultures through food. And it was used in schools really around the country. And it was a lot of fun. And then I became Yahoo Foods International food blogger for 2 years. Yeah. When Yahoo was bigger than it is today. And I was making recipes and photographing. And, food has been very enriching to me. And even in New York now, my kids and I, we went to an Indian temple recently where we had food. We're always going on food adventures all over Queens, all over Brooklyn. But there's a Palestinian area that has fabulous food. And it's just so wonderful to go to these food stores. I really, was frankly, the thing I miss most about the coronavirus. I mean, there's many things I miss, but I just wish I could go into these random neighborhoods and restaurants.
That's true, isn't it? Yes. I mean, that's put a damper, but hopefully not for long. But this is again, this when I first heard you talking about it, I was not at all surprised, because this is obviously a part of your personality that's got nothing to do with either retail or technology, but it is that curiosity, and that's really what making connections across very different industries and different types of dots is all about. So again, I think I'm not at all surprised that you would end up interviewing America's leading chefs and creating a show for kids to do cooking. It's fascinating. I know we could continue to talk about that as well for a very long time, but thank you for sharing from your personal life those anecdotes. But I can't let you go before I have you talk about catalyzing innovation and the latest release of that particular book. It is it's incredible. It is, you call it a living book. You've got innovations that are now topical thanks to coronavirus. So could you tell us a little more about what's new in it?
Okay, I'm just constantly collecting based on many different things. There's a number of resources that keep me current. So one of them, every year, Fast Company has the 50 most innovative companies.
Uh-huh.
And I always read that. J. Walter Thompson has a publication, comes out the end of the year about 100 things to watch in the next year. I just from my going around in stores, watching TV, reading my students' projects, I'm just constantly collecting examples of things that are innovative in different ways. And I have 63 different types of innovation. So there's materials and business model and price point and color and size and shape. You can just like reversing things, turning something upside down. Coca-Cola had a Stranger Things vending machine that was upside down. They did a tie-in with Burger King for Stranger Things that was an upside down hamburger. Some of these things, they're not expensive, but they're just clever and they get attention and they get viral buzz.
Yes.
So I've also been noting a lot of innovation, unfortunately, coming out of coronavirus. And some of the things have been organizational innovation, like Cuomo. I've been very impressed with Governor Cuomo, and he forced the entire New York State hospital system to operate as one. So you had private and public hospitals filling in for each other, going back and forth and breaking down silos. So I thought that was innovative. There's something with vaccines that I'm finding very innovative. For the first time ever, competing drug companies are collaborating on testing so that they only have one controlled placebo group rather than each one having to get their own controlled placebo groups. So that's helping speed things up.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, materials, when there wasn't enough protective equipment, people were using, it's horrible, but it was innovative. Garbage bags, plastic garbage bags, just anything they had that could fulfill some not as good a function, but at least do better than nothing.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Location innovation, locating hospitals in convention centers in Central Park, testing. One of the more interesting aspects of potential testing is dogs that are sensitized to dogs have a very, very keen sense of smell, and they think that they can detect coronavirus.
Oh, okay.
So that's something, numbers innovation, ventilators, doubling the amount of people that can be treated with the same amount of ventilators by putting 2 tubes coming out of this ventilator. So there've been a lot of innovations that have come out of coronavirus, which I think are quite interesting.
Oh, that's
Tony,
amazing.
There's one thing that, I'm sorry, if I can go back to one question that you had, because
please do.
You asked about retail, and there's one thing that I find super interesting, and it's partly related to coronavirus. It's vending machines. Carvana is selling cars through vending machines.
Amazing.
It is amazing. And they've changed their tagline since coronavirus to the safer way to buy a car.
Oh.
But I've been looking, I was in Singapore in November, and I noticed some interesting things in vending machines. I went to a mall called the Changi Airport Mall. That's considered the best airport mall in the world. Just opened, and it's spectacular. But there's like good jewelry being sold from a vending machine. Also in Singapore, there was fresh Norwegian salmon fillets sold in a vending machine outside an apartment building in a middle-class neighborhood.
Oh, you're kidding me. Fresh salmon.
Yes, I'll send you the picture.
Wow.
Salmon fillets from Norway. It just seems so random. Tiffany has a perfume vending machine in their store in London. Sprinkles Cupcake ATM. Benefit Cosmetics vending machines. So I think vending machines are interesting because they have low overhead. It's a sales outlet where you don't need to pay a lot for real estate or employees. There's advertising value to it. It's usually in an uncluttered environment, etc. So that's one aspect of disrupt. I don't know how disruptive it is, but it's disruptive to me. Like, just one more example. There's a vending machine of really high class, first rate meat in upstate New York, in the Hudson Valley, that sells really like super gourmet lamb chops and tenderloin and strip steak and all this stuff in beautiful vending machines.
Oh my God.
And
And that's counterintuitive because in the image of vending machines you have are certainly not high quality, high price, right? And so this
Exactly.
is definitely a very intriguing innovation.
Exactly. So I'm sorry. I just wanted to share that because I
Oh,
thought
not at all. No, these are fascinating examples. And again, this is what you do. You provide practical examples. And I know you have many, many more. So for our listeners who would love to learn more about how they can either reach you for further questions or, contact you for inventors or for catalyzing innovation or, any of the other things that you have mentioned, would you mind sharing your contacts?
Sure. So my book is available on the Apple Store. I only have it available through the Apple Store because I wrote it in iBooks Author software and it enables me to change it all the time. So I can keep adding to it. And so it's very flexible.
That's brilliant. And one last imposition on you. For those of us that are sitting in here and saying, you know what? I would love to be a Michelle Greenwald. I'm at the beginning of that particular journey, though. What would be your advice on the first step we can take to become that incredibly innovative person, broad-based, that has the ability to make connections across, disconnected dots in the retail space?
Okay. It's funny because a lot of people ask me that. Even men ask me that a lot, which sometimes surprises me, but I makes me feel good. Number one, you don't have to only have one career in life. I think in the old days that was normal, but now you can reinvent yourself. And so I think it's important if you're not happy in what you're doing to find something that you can feel passionate about, that you can, change. So I'd say this is what I advise my students, don't coast through life, find something that you love and give it your all and be curious and continue to learn and grow because that makes you more fun to be around and it makes your life more interesting.
Wow, that's fabulous advice. Thank you so much. Michelle, thank you very much once again. It was, as is always the case, a fabulous experience talking with you and learning so much about how things are changing in the retail and marketing business. And to all of our listeners, thank you for joining us today. And until next time, keep reinventing retail.
Hey everyone, this is producer Ben. One quick note. Michelle asked us to actually give a different email address than the one she gave in the interview. So if you'd like to get in touch with Michelle, please email her at catalyzinginnovation@gmail.com. Once again, catalyzinginnovation@gmail.com. Thank you again for listening to Winning Retail. To find more episodes and subscribe to our newsletter, go to winningretailpodcast.com.
Thank you again to our friends at Dell Technologies and Intel. Our era of retail digital transformation is powered by analytics and artificial intelligence. By taking massive amounts of data and leveraging that for actionable insights, artificial intelligence and 5G can be used to create curated and relevant shopping experiences, tighten inventory controls and management, fine-tune your supply chain, drive operational efficiencies, and realize a lower total cost of ownership. Together, we're building the future of retail today, a future in which data fusion and artificial intelligence provides insights from the first customer engagement to purchase, right through to predicting demand. Discover what IoT and edge computing in retail can do for your business. Visit delltechnologies.com/retail and intel.com/retail.